Thank you all. I'm glad to be here. I'm going to read a few new poems first and then go to the old workhorses. Working on a series of poems about religion, spirituality, African ideas of God in the Americas, primarily North America. I'll read you one of them. It's called Reconversion. A wounded, dying Christ, crucified with thieves at Calvary, need not be killed again for me. Give me the moon that dies and is reborn within 3 days. Give me sun, planet, stars, the black, infinite space through which they fly, in harmony at once human and more than human, older than any chronicled time. Be in me infinitely finite, fertile earth, and let none of your creatures ever be sacrificed again for me. I have swallowed the key to heaven. Let the fires of hell go cold as the dark of the moon. Let the cold arms of hell warm as a thermal spring. Let the circles of Sheol close so tightly that they disappear. I have forgiven myself. The sun is enough for me. I welcome each gray or color-drenched day as I welcome each loud or still night in the dark or the light of the moon. 2. There are deserts, there will be flood. I will suffer through droughts of ignorance, splash driven through swamps of hunger, blown in the wind as tree, drenched in the rain as stone, to be able to be on cloudless days upright in the sun as human being. Though Baron Samedi will collect his due, though Lilegba ask unanswerable questions and Ursula get hers whenever she wants, I forgive myself and forgive you too. Blood of beginnings, the reach of our grasp, drag of our tails, curl of the lip, droop of the eyelid, mote in the eye, hook of sweet meat sunk in the spirit, now forever, out of the blue-green sea, across open plain, up white mountains, into fertile valleys, a star close by, worlds beyond, roll of oceans, flight of the moon. 3. What displaced African at last, receiving a long-lost legacy, ecstatic dance under tropical stars, drum and heartbeat, one great song, could claim any heaven bereft of goddess? No dark, no yin, no rest between beats, endless thunder without rain. Remembering now my moon-drenched route, I leave that dry Bethel, leave my armor rusting by his mammoth door, drum and heartbeat, one great song, go dancing in a rain to a river there, drum and heartbeat, one great song, where her tree is deeply rooted there, drum and heartbeat, one great song, where the deathless serpent waits, drum and heartbeat, one great song, where I sit in her fecund silence there, drum and heartbeat, one great song, where I dance and wait, wait as a valley waits for thawing snow that must, as cool water, come. A person who was once a friend of mine, but who is not a friend of mine any longer, came to me once about a month or so ago and said, "Hey, I write poetry. I'd like you to criticize my work." I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll be glad to do that, because I feel poetry is like a sacred task. It requires a lot of discipline and a lot of hard work. And if a poet is a person who knows something about the art and the craft, and somebody else who doesn't, then you provide that kind of information to people." Now, after I did, I lost my friend. That's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate, because one of the problems is that we get hooked up in petty egos when there is so much work that needs to be done. Okay, it's an untitled poem. This occurred, too, at a time of the full moon, which may help to explain some of the rancor that was happening between us. I make a reference, too, to a recent novel of Ishmael Reed's called The Terrible Twos. Those of us who rear children or know anything about children know what that period of time is when children go through the terrible twos. not only children sometimes. The full and silent moon, as full and white as a pail of goat's milk, throwing its cold light on our hidden agendas, had something to do with it. Waves of anger wax red in the eyes. The jagged line on the murder graph shoots toward the top of the chart. The full-term fetus kicks like a fanatic at the door of a swollen wound. Blank-eyed men prowl the streets, rape and mayhem hard as nightsticks swelling in their trousers. The pulsing blood in our uncovered heads as restless and moonstruck as the sea. Thought that human watermark roils under the moon tonight, and as a child squalling in a tantrum. Ishmael is right. We are caught in the throes of the terrible twos, megalids from the neck up, as if our fragile feelings were more sacred than the work we have to do. I pull against you, pushing you, push against me, pulling. Someone lifts, someone presses down, and the building that houses all of us thunders to the ground. This is Babel time. There is no one plan we all understand. A blind spot spreads like cancer, darkening our vision. To each of us, then, blinders and a pigeonhole. Yours has feathers, mine has straw, hers is lined in naugahyde. Though the many are boxed off from the one, are clustered singularly together in the boxes we have made, and wander in the finite longitudes and latitudes of our separate selves, still we need our lives affirmed. If not the roar of adulating crowds, if not love and fame, then a few coins in the hand, a name on a title page, a trophy to outlast us, a handshake, a pat on the back, a kiss. The cowardly suicide deserting the world ass backwards wants even death, the dark side of the moon, affirmed. But who can affirm what they can't see? Fools, lunatics, poets. Yes is claimed in bliss, and bliss is born from wholeness. Spirit, flesh, mind, muscle, one singing thing. We are not whole. We are the blind blaming the blind, when you should be touching my eyes, when I should be taking your hand, under this sky pregnant with storms, under this storm cloud sky. I write occasional poems from time to time, when I'm asked. And I was asked to write a poem to celebrate the Sterling Brown, who's a poet, an African-American poet who's about 80 years old now and has been writing for most of his adult life. And he's a praise singer. That is, he praises the life of the poet. And most of the best poets will be praise singers. They will find something somewhere, somehow, to praise. So the poem is dedicated to Sterling Brown, who was a praise singer. It's dedicated to the praise singers themselves. And it's also dedicated to what I'm beginning to call the dark goddess. That power, that force, that energy that guides and moves me as a poet, and perhaps some other people too. The poem's called Some Modes of Life Are Deathless. No, you can't kill her. No, you can't kill her. Poets sing it all the time. No, you can't kill her. A strong taproot pushes down through African soil, snakes across the bloody Atlantic, pushes tough sweet shoots up through the shoulders of Southern American roads. Slavery couldn't kill her. The monstrous weight of American greed couldn't bring her to her knees. Slitting the heads of the holy drums couldn't silence her. The harsh language of Angles and Saxons couldn't muzzle or mute her music. Tears and blood-tinctured sweat of forced labor watered her. Splinter-rifed, calloused hands weeded her. Dark voices in prayer and song vibrated through her leaves, settled on her branches, rained down into her roots, and the dark goddess reclaimed her name. When she called out, singing, Lord, singing, as if the names of gods and goddesses, singing, Lord, singing, as if all the power of primal song from Luxor to Monomatapa to Zululand had collected in her throat. When she called out from common folk and ways Up jumped an African backbone dancing blue fire song to generous rhythms as old as the hills. When she called out and the fog burned off and the bridge was secured, her singers called back. A chorus of voices singing old praise songs in a brand new tongue, singing old praise songs out of common folk and ways, singing black fire songs to generous rhythms as old as the hills, singing, no, no, you can't kill us. No, no, you can't kill us. Poets sing it all the time. No, no, you can't kill us. Blood debt. A debt of blood veils our eyes, and we may never recognize the promised land on which any one of us right now stands or sits. Somebody ought to weep about it. Some man or woman or child, some fool ought to step out of a circle of sawdust, or to flip-flop in flappy shoes through the cubes and corners of our concrete mazes and weep for us poor, dumb human animals. Weep dirges for the human blood shed by human hands. Weep for the long and bloody trek from the caves of Africa to the surface of the moon. In the name of arrogant ignorance, somebody ought to weep about it, about the trees of truth choked by the vines of lies, or to weep for the thinking animals whose hard heads outweigh their weaker, wiser bodies, or to weep, let it loose, weep for the handmade world, for the nearly subdued earth, for the smashed atom, for the restless ghosts of Verdun, Anzio, Dresden, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, My Lai, for the knotted xenophobic web that traps and locks us in our separate cells, our separate states, or to weep, weep, weep for the war since the first stone was hurled from a brute and hairy hand. Weep for these sapient beings whom our mother the earth could do just as well without, or to weep, let tears flow. Weep for the fitfully conscious thinking mammals who are not the center of this earth and who carry in their fearful territorial hearts war and killing, war and killing. We have killed for hunger, for woman's love, for mother's womb, for father's birthright. We have killed for the truth. We have fed our gods and devils the smoke and flesh and fat of human hams. We have killed possessed by fear, our blood on fire, a deathly cold. When brain wires spark and sputter in madness, envy, jealous rage, we have killed for ego's empty needs. We have killed for plunder to propitiate the great god gold, and whom we did not kill, we sold. We have killed for fixed ideas. We have killed for floating ideas. We have killed for Schramm and Lebensraum. We have killed to save our face, our honor, and our family name. We have killed for pleasure. We have killed or be killed. We have killed mercifully. We have killed to right wrongs, to wrong rights, to prove points. In the name of justice, we have killed. Somebody ought to weep about it, or to let tears flow till a healing flood sweeps away this debt of blood that veils our eyes. Only then may we recognize the promised land on which any one of us right now stands. Let's see. I'm not going to read too many. It's a poem to C.K. Williams, Philadelphia poet. I don't know, but whose work I like. Dear C.K., I'm in the Pentoni Tavern at 13th and Arch, sipping warm wine and thinking about there's too much random hunger in this room. Men with their backs to the wall, insect pincers for eyes. Men wearing the submissive power of women. Men whose final options lie on the concrete floors of the factories they have just left. Men who live here. Men who don't give a shit about words or gods or politics. The bartenders could be prison guards. We could all be locked out of ourselves. If I passed you anywhere on Broad Street, I wouldn't recognize you. If Dick Cavett jerked out of the Fairmont Hotel, I'd recognize him. He'd be shorter than he is on TV. If he's alone, he won't be smiling. Your sad, hurting poems have signed a long-term lease with me. They've settled into a cluttered corner of my feeling. I wish you were the kind of tenant who would leave things as they are. I watch the faces and gestures of these mostly black men in the long dusty mirror before me. I tell myself that Christ and Marx were both absolutely right. As I'm sure you know, they are both dead. The tailor's port is beginning to warm my bowels. There are no women in this place. Some man owes some man a drink. A loud, murderous argument is making the truth audible. I'll finish the wine, take the trolley home, watch Dick Cavett on the tube. You take care, you hear? Okay, 2 more poems. They're very long. I hope you're prepared. One is the poem after Jerry Richardson to black women. My mother was one. The women have backbones like young trees and spirits in them that nothing can kill. They are always mourning, will always pass the night, swimming through a churning river of tears or afloat on a lake in a boat of joy. They pass through our night and show us morning. Rain-drenched or cloudless, they show us morning. In the wind-whipped rain and the storm and the rain, in the rain and the storm and the wind-whipped rain, the breaking, the beginning, the sunrise, the river, the flowing, the golden morning, the root, the root. In the wind-whipped rain and the storm and the rain, the breaking, the beginning, the sunrise, the river, the flowing, the golden morning, the root, the root. Loose, huddle, sometimes lost night, who cares, blue night song, whipped morning, beginning, tears, moaning, womb of it, moan, morning, slow, bursting, dawning, slow, turning, softly, breaking, eternal dawning, breaking, beginning, soft, gold and rose, weeping, blue, night song, willow, waving, pieces of heaven, open light and laughter, edge of the sun, pieces of heaven, river, womb of ocean, pieces of heaven, holy river, her heart, sacred pieces of heaven, holy, black woman, the root, reservoir of fire and flowing water, reservoir of spirit and dance of ecstasy, reservoir of history and mother of man, reservoir of reservoirs, the root, for your strength and surviving, for your anguish and sorrow, for your witness and testimony, for your laughter and courage, for your straight-back toughness, for your mouth and beauty, for your breasts and full hips, for your tears and screaming, for your beautiful smiles, for your body, soul of summer night and calm fire, burning, soft burning, burning, slow burning, burning, soft burning, burning. Thank you. Finally, a poem about, this might be cheerful, death, suicide, homicide, about Jonestown, which struck me, very deeply. I'm thinking now about Jerry's poem about the parents who committed suicide so that the children could live. That's a worthy, noble sacrifice. But these people offering themselves in the name of some nebulous kind of ideal and at the behest of a madman is weird. I don't like to speak in generalities, but it's like black people in this country have managed to grow and to flourish and have such a tenacious hold on living in the world that how is it possible, since the majority of these people who off themselves were black, that these people would kill themselves? And so I had to consider it, and this poem came out of it. Let me tell you a few things about it before I deal with it. Give you a few notes. There are some people I mentioned that maybe you need to know. Legba. This event occurred in the Caribbean basin, and voodoo, which is an authentic African religion that's still working in the Caribbean, in South America, and in parts of the United States. And Legba is the intercessor between human beings and the divine spirit. So one must consult with Legba before one deals with the powers. I mentioned also Baron Samedi, who's the god, or the loa, rather, of cemeteries and graveyards. Further on, I mentioned Osiris, who was an Egyptian god of the underworld. Most of us, when we think Egypt as this place that's not in Africa. Egypt is an African country. It was settled by African peoples. Mawulisa is an androgynous god in the pantheon of the Dahomey peoples. That is, Mawulisa is both male and female, which is a sophisticated kind of idea if you think about it long enough. I mentioned the prophet, which is Muhammad, Christ and Buddha that we all know. Dambala is a serpent spirit in the Haitian pantheon. That is the power of the serpent who swallows his tail and revolves around the sun and keeps everything going. And we all know who Zarathustra is. He's Nietzsche's invention, the person who will overcome humanity and hates, above all things, weakness and stupidity. I also mentioned the Loa, who are the divine powers in the Haitian religions. The Loa are said to, when they possess their devotees, they are said to ride their hosts. There's a mention in here about horsepower. So that's where that comes from. Okay. Poem's called Under Scorpio. The Jonestown Homisuicides. Yo, Papa Legba, watchman at the fork of spirit and flesh. Something told me I should come to you, so here I am. I am only poor meat on this hard earth, but I got something I got to say. Yo, Papa Legba, linchpin of African memory. I mean no disrespect to you or the Baron, but I got to talk about his cold town. Some people wandered in a darkness they thought was light. They fell in a pit. I got to talk about that fall. Yo, Papa Legba, guardian of tongues, if they could have remembered to call your name, they may have been ridden by less cruel riders and not have been ridden to the town of their deaths. Yo, Papa Legba, transplanted African older than America, hold my tongue straight. I'm going to run my mouth for a while. 1, give me that old-time religion. It was not Jesus in those old churches who moved through the people like visible thunder. Not Jesus who shook the penitents and drew their left legs toward the center of the earth. Not Jesus in them making holy music with hands and mouth and feet. Not that Essene mystic who held in his open hands the weight of Jewish history. Though they invoked his name, there was an African power beneath that rhythmic calling. God of drum and shakery, black as fertile earth, dancing, shouting in the aisles, reverberating in their souls. 2, horsepower. When the Loa choose a human to ride, horse and rider meet halfway. Horse submits to Loa. Loa possesses horse. Loa and human becoming one power. Human is God. Spirit possessed, unbroken and ecstatic. Unlike American bronco busters, owned themselves by the heirs of pirates now ensconced in boardrooms who whip and ride and whip until the bridle fits like a blessing on the broken wheel, accepted the harness, the bit, accepted the saddle, the weight of the rider, accepted the spurs, the crops, reminders, the blinders, a matter of course. 3, the call. The cities exact the terrible dues of the poor, the peasant, the landless. To the mute high rises rife with numbers, they come, they pay, they barter and pay, raw chunks of spirit, slivers of soul. Sky-ripping skyscrapers squat on the lives of these poor believers, scourge them with double talk and televised dream, the blanched pastels of improbable dreams. In the scleroid hearts of cities, in pockets of impoverished dust, the lost spirit will still seek to find its home, will kowtow to teachers and preachers, give up pinched pennies and cracked will to the glib many or the genuine few, the sleek hawkers of the word who say, there is a place where the have-nots may have, where the boxed-in may sphere out, where the backsliding sinner may be redeemed, where the long-suffering faithful may sing shout their faith, where the sick may find whole health. Come, you who have learned to walk on your knees, you lost, anesthetized, confused, hiders in pasts, fearers of futures, you wounded and victim, you stoic survivor, you whom the wheel of the state have crushed, you who hang on the precipice of life by the ragged thread of your flagging desire. Come, the world is as real and as hard as stone. Come to this rest and refuge. 4, the coming. They came. out of the city into the jungle, cut a clearing in that jungle, built a compound, named it Jonestown. Here these expatriate American, newfound, so-called Christian socialists would make their stand. They followed the lead of a flawed, crippled shepherd whose love for them was hatred at its root. His life hurt him, and he hated it as much as he hated them. He hated their womb light, their elemental blackness, their blind belief. He hated his shallow face in the faith. He hated his shallow faith in the face of such blind believers. Few, if any, could see the hatred, for the power of the mad God is as awesome and as magnetic as the power of the gods of sanity. And all the while, in the jungle beyond their encampment, and in the jungle soul of their misled leader, the wild dogs of greed and commerce, of the will to power, leaner than hunger and as determined as death, stalk their new Jerusalem, waiting for the shepherd's hatred to come full circle and burst into flame. 5. In God we trust. Once the state palpated the owl's tiny liver to learn what that blind bird augured. Once the state bit into the warm heart of the kid to taste the movements of the future. Once the state prayed to the gods of hungry earth as priests broadcast over seeded furrows blood from the veins of pubescent virgins. Once the state tipped its helmets to angry gods before it sent its sons to war. Once the state nailed Christ to his crucifix when his power leaked beyond its limits. Once the state drew purple drapes between it and the smoking stench of burning heretics. Akhenaten and Moses knew that for good or ill, church and state are never wholly separate. The soot from Salem witches drifts down on a Guyanese forest. It settles on the bowed heads of a band of penitents who profess to follow Jesus Christ, Karl Marx, Jim Jones. 6. The catalytic converters. After they have done their commission work, the men of the company, uppercase C, smoke under a shade tree. These advanced soldiers of the Western death, these bureaucratic cowboys in three-piece suits, these dealers in psychotropic chemical compounds, these hitmen and runners and fermenters of confusion, these hard-eyed, greasy-mouthed, tight-lipped, cold-souled men wait for the deaths and the stink of the corpses, wait to blow that pestilential air back to America. We breathe it in. It films our soul and dulls our sense before we breathe it out and in again. 7. Loom of the legacy. Sired by humankind, a deformed evil is breech-born from the fecund womb of good. It drags its ugliness hell-bent along the paved road of good intentions. Nearly 1,000 bodies bloat under a burning Guyanese sun. Flies and the lord of flies buzz and gloat. So many carcasses in which to pant their futures. Tender meat child, soft meat woman, muscular meat man. A mad God sits within that putrefaction, pitilessly blind, and yes, Albert, shooting craps with the men who made him man. Craps nobody wins, boxcars of drugs for the malleable minds who surrendered selves and souls to a mad American in a safari suit, gave themselves up to be led to their deaths on the shortened leash of the word that is nomo and compassion and agape, the word that should open us all to a human harmony in the light of the Spirit. But how many mouths spit in the face of the word? How many tongues twist the truth of the word? How many opposable thumbs dig in the eyes of the word? How many hands close around the throat of the word? How many alligator tears fall at the empty grave of the word? Death is neither accident nor invention. Its power transforms all life without our approbation or our understanding. Death is a force beyond our control, but murder is man-made. The trembling enraged hand of the potassium cyanide injection, bloody Abel or scorched Hiroshima, human. We have made death a god. Human beings have done that. We have made God a man. Human beings have done that. No tidal wave leaping up out of a mother of the sea. No hurricane spinning wind and whipping rain. No tornado whirling along its narrow swathing path. No volcano vomiting magma from the mouth of the earth. Only fear and stupidity and the particular madness of men. The mad God gone mad, drunk on power and the fear of power. Power you have relinquished because you would be children forever, because you would sleep in a small man's fears and not wake and wrestle with your own. You would give to the Father your will and choice, to the Father who grows fat on the growth you deny, the engorged Father whose greed demands no less than the totality of your submission, your very deaths. And he eats your liver and gnaws at your heart and drinks your blood. And Osiris balks at the door of the underworld, and Mabu Lisa splits in two, and the lotus in the Buddha's hand withers, and Christ pulls the stone back to the mouth of his cave, and the prophet returns to his mountain, and Damballa hisses dirges in the darkening bush, and Zarathustra sings a song of good riddance, and earth spins on. 8. The legacy. Father Divine left food and shelter behind. Dad Jones left a hill of bones. 9. The ritual beating of the breast. I am not weeping. Why does sea leak from my eyes? Rain won't stop falling. Fat sparkling streams swirl into sewers. Great spirit in chains. Water is leaking from the gaseous sun. Vultures descending. Corpses of children swelling and stinking. Murdered in the end of brief beginning.